Hey guys, can you hear me? Yes, no. Let me type it out. Hello, can you hear me? Hi, Tarun. Hi. Hello, everybody. How are you doing, Tarun? Awesome. Good to hear that. Hello, Anjani. Awesome. So, Tarun, why keeping the money flowing and then making the money? Does that work for cyclical sectors? Okay. All right. Hi, Pradeep. I hope so too. No pressure on me. Hello, Vishnu. Hi, Gopi. Weekend is going well. Thank you. Okay, guys, let's get started. And if you have any, oh, thanks, Tarun. If you have any questions, please do put it in the. Hello, Lakshmi. Why don't you put up your questions in the comment section and I'll take one after the other. But I'll start with one question that I already received through LinkedIn, through bunch of different other platforms as well. Okay. So the question was, hey, there is Nirav Modi, then there are a lot of other bad actors who do not repay their loans, right? They probably take lots of money that we are not even talking about the number of zeros that go into it. We are talking about a lot of money, and these guys are then not paying back the loans. Is it structurally a problem for the bank? And how do banks handle it? Right? That was one of the questions that I received. Now, I believe this is my perspective, guys. This is what I think about the banking industry as such. Now, take a step back and understand where is our country growing. Let's say the government says that we need to grow at 6%, 7% every single year. Okay. If the government has that growth target, then it means there should be a lot of production in the country, there should be a lot of spending in the country, and all these things should happen simultaneously. So there has to be a lot of money in the system as well. And there has to be a lot of construction. Roads should be constructed. There should be a lot of infrastructure that should be built up. Now, the government can say to the Reserve Bank of India, go ahead, print some money. But what does RBI do in that scenario? They'll print the money, but it has to go to a bank, and only the banks are those intermediaries which can give money to you and me. Correct? We cannot downplay the role of a bank here. You guys agree with me so far? Right? The banks are fundamentally important because whatever the governments in the world want to do, everything can be executed only through a bank. It is not, there is no other way for the government to reach you and me with respect to increasing our spending power, increasing the production capacity, or building a road. For all of that, money is required. And who is in the center of all these things? Banks. So for everything, we need to understand how banks work. And let's start with, could an Adani default lead to a 2008 like crisis in India? Okay, so now the point is whether it is Adani, whether it is, let's say, Nirav Modi, if any of these guys default, right? Then what is the option for a bank? The bank might say, hey, there are a lot of people who are not repaying loans. So I'll not lend money, I'll not give any kind of loan. Then that's a problem for the economy. I don't know how many of you know, but even before the entire COVID situation hit, 2018, 2019, 2017, like all these 3 years, the economy was going down in India. Right? The GDP growth rate of India was going down slowly. Just go check GDP growth rate of India 2017, 2018, 2019. You will notice that. And it has nothing to do with the pandemic yet. Right? So there was already a decline because the banks were losing trust on people like Nirav Modi. So they increase the conditions, the terms for basically giving out loans. So banks, if banks start doing that, then we are in trouble. Then the problem is banks cannot do that. They cannot stop giving out loans. It's a risk that they need to take. The government is also okay for the banks to take these risks, because if the bank is not taking this risk, then the economy will anyways collapse. Make sense, guys? If the banks are not taking that risk of giving out money, well, they have to be little more diligent with respect to who is taking the money. Are they paying that money back versus not? But historically, everywhere you will see there will be these bad people, bad actors anywhere in any industry, and banks cannot avoid that. It's just the nature of the industry, and banks have to deal with it. Now, if you ask the next question, would SBI, Bank of Baroda, with all the news that is going on with respect to Adani, why are these CEOs coming into the market and still saying that, hey, we are ready to give out a loan to Adani? If basically they are meeting all the terms and conditions, why are they still going and promising loans to Adani? Because Adani is the only Indian player right now who is promising that, hey, India is promising the growth story. We are going to be the country in the next century. We are going to lead the world, all that stuff. But for all that stuff to happen, somebody should execute on the ground. Somebody should execute the plans that government is coming up, build these roads, expand these ports. Infrastructure is the key. Now, who else is doing this work other than Adani? Nobody. So Indian government, the banks, nobody has a choice but to give these things, right? So absolutely, there is no choice for a lot of banks but to give out loans. Otherwise, the economy will anyways collapse. So that's the perspective that I have with respect to whether you give out a loan versus not. Just go check out what happened in 2018 between September and November. In those 3 months, the stock markets in India have fallen by 20%. In less than 2 months, not even 3 months. In 2 months, if the stock market is falling in by 20%, definitely there is something wrong. Right? And go check out what was the wrong thing. It is because banks have lost trust on the consumers, and they did not. Banks were the central for that entire collapse in those 2 months. 20% drop in stock markets. So we cannot afford to do not do these things. Banks cannot afford to not do these things. So they'll continue to give out these loans. They'll continue to engage with people. They'll continue to face these bad actors. And that's the reason why Bank of Baroda, State Bank of India, the public sector banks have a mandate. These banks, the major goal for them is to grow the country. Right? I hope you understand where I'm coming from. Would you agree? No? Can you please press on that like button, say in the chat window, yes, no? I would love to hear your thoughts. I don't want to go on a monologue. I just want to look at your questions and answer, if any other, as well. Agree. Should the government agreed? Yep. Yep. Okay. Any other thoughts around this, guys? You do continue to ask in the questions. I will answer mine. Now, if I go back, somebody has asked me another question. What is the role between how fintech companies like the new age tech finance companies are coming up, and how are they collaborating with the traditional banks like ICICI, HDFCs, all these companies, right? Now, the main nature of these private banks, right? I'm not talking about the public banks. Public banks have a different objective that they want to. Then why is not giving those statements? Of course, private banks, Gopi, their objective is to make more money. They are not controlled by the government. Government objective is to grow the country, and for them, they taking risk is okay. If SBI, let's say goes down tomorrow, government will come and basically help SBI for sure, right? But will they do the same thing with HDFC, or will they do the same thing with ICICI or Axis Bank? We don't know. We cannot be so sure, right? So it's okay for these public banks to come and give out these statements, right? Now, no matter they take, there should be some screening to avoid. Of course, Tarun, of course. So that's the reason why they are talking about those terms and conditions. But let me also tell you this, Tarun, right? Everybody, now you think about it. Okay. Gopi, you guys are asking some great questions. So let me tell you one more thought over here. I live in Hyderabad. guys. I don't know if anybody is from Hyderabad. In 2013, 2014 in Hyderabad, the Hyderabad Metro. If you are in Hyderabad, I'm sure you would have traveled in the Hyderabad Metro, one of the best metros that any city in India has. Now, the entire project planning when it was starting initially in 2008, 2009, or even before that, it was very clear on the paper, right? This project is not economically viable, which means the potential profits coming from this particular project is very questionable. That was economic viability model when it was decided to even think about a metro coming out in Hyderabad. But still, you see now the metro is coming and the metro is there, and it was launched by then Chief Minister, Mr. YS Rashik Reddy. And the point is, right, there are multiple forces in our economy, right? One is politicians, then there are businessmen, then there are like banks, right? Our topic for the day, banks. Now, if the economic viability of a project, some analyst will do Excel analysis and come to their manager and say that, hey, economically, it might not be viable. Right? Why? Why is he saying? Because he or she, the analyst, is basically building up a lot of assumptions into coming up with model. And the manager will say, hey, this assumption might be wrong, this assumption might be right. So let's change the model and let's make it economically viable on paper, at least. Now, that's a financial viability, whether it will work or not in the future, that's all assumption based. Correct, guys? And those assumptions are driven by businessmen, managers, and those assumptions are driven by politicians. So, end of the day, banks are a part of the system. So, when somebody is taking a decision, banks will go with it. So, you can never ever say that, hey, that banks can put strict controls on, like, hey, what are the projections? Like Tarun, you are saying no matter the risk they take, there should be some screening to avoid lending hefty loans. But the screeners itself, Tarun, is basically very, very subjective. Nobody can say this screener is absolutely strong because, again, it's an assumption that people won't cross this screener. So, at any given point in time, financial viability of any project is very questionable. And that's the reason why when Adani is coming and giving out a huge rosy picture for what they are going to do in the next 10 years, nobody can question it as much because it's all assumption. Your assumptions are different from my assumptions, end of the day. Right? So some banks are okay giving it because they want to take more risk and they want country to grow. So whenever it comes to banks, whenever it comes to money, it's all assumptions and nobody can guarantee it. So these guys need to continue lending money, and that is the root cause of the problem. I hope you agree with me. Please to press on that either like button or again a comment. So uh, I just want to take a pause here. Any questions on this topic? What happens if after 10 years the assumption come to losses? Bunch of scenarios, Gopi. Either there could be economic crisis, or the government will print more money. The government will basically go ahead and then say that, hey, we are supporting the bank, right? So it all of these things are in the government hand. End of the day, because government is promising the growth story, so the government will take care of these things. Okay. Now I'm just going through some questions, guys. What should be the way forward? Okay, I'll get to that. Vishnu is asking, can you explain how increasing the interest rates will curb inflation? Is there any regulation or increasing the interest rate? Okay, so inflation, guys, this is a very interesting topic. Uh, I'll talk about it, Advait. But let me first talk about the inflation and see, the world is now divided in terms of inflation. If I say inflation is going down, you might have some data points which will say no, inflation is not going down, inflation is still very high, all that stuff. If I say inflation is like completely going high, it's going to be bonkers in the next 1 year, then you might come back and say that, hey, inflation is going down, right? Whatever I say, you might have an other opinion. So what is happening with respect to inflation is a very personal opinion. I have a different opinion, you have a different opinion, so let's agree on that fact. Now, why are people having different opinions, and how does this entire world work with respect to why people are divided so much? Because it's for their benefit. right? For example, the central bank says, or the Reserve Bank of India says the inflation is going down, right? They say every month they release that report. Even in the US, the consumer price index, they release that report and say whether inflation is going down or inflation is going up. Now, what happens if the inflation is going down? It very clearly says that, hey, the interest rates to control inflation are not going to increase. Let me just take a few seconds to help Vishnu understand how this is working out. For example, Vishnu, if there is more interest rate that is being offered by your bank, you will probably say, let me save more money because I'll get more interest rate, right? So your ability to spend money in the economy will go down. So the demand for the products will come down. So subsequently, the prices will come down. And again, the inflation, whatever we call the price increases, that will drop down, right, Vishnu? So that is how increase in the interest rate will get the prices down. Subsequently, the economy will also suffer because there is no production happening, there is no sales happening, so on and so forth. Now, when central bank says, hey, inflation is coming down, which means they are going to reduce that interest rate hikes in the going near future, then what does it mean? Very simple. All the stock market, the companies will be very happy because they can sell more products. And when they can sell more products, of course, the stocks will increase, the markets will be very happy. That is the reason why, on one end of the spectrum, it is very clearly saying that, hey, inflation is going down. So that's one viewpoint. Now, oh yeah, let's think about the second viewpoint. Why do people say that inflation is actually increasing? That is also a viewpoint, by the way, guys. So the reason is very simple. If you look at the unemployment rate, right, around the world, not just in India, well, yes, Google, Amazon, Netflix, all these companies are firing people, but that's a very small portion of the global workforce, right? These are point not 1% who are on the top creamy layer. If you think about the overall working population, the labor unemployment rates are coming down. And if the unemployment rates are coming down, and also at the same time, when inflation is at 5 to 6% currently, what does it mean? It means that people are getting that salary hikes as well. So if people are getting salary hikes, if the unemployment is pretty low, then what does it mean? People will have more money to spend. People will continue. So as soon as the interest rates fall down, then they'll continue to spend more. So that inflation will be there intact. So different people are basically saying different things. Now you ask me, where do I stand? My 2 cents is around basically the unemployment rates, right? Banks might say too many things, whether it is working theoretically or not, whether the markets are all sentiment driven. But if you ask, the unemployment rates are anyways coming down, and the percentage increase in the salary is almost equal to the inflation rate. So the spending power will continue to happen. And I'm it's just my personal perspective. You might have your own perspective, as I'm saying. These are all like where you want to stand and what you want to believe kind of discussions. There is nothing right, nothing wrong here. Right, guys? Any thoughts, any questions around that? I think Vishnu, you asked me a small question, but I expanded on it quite a lot. I hope this makes sense, Vishnu. Okay, thank you, Vishnu. Any other questions, guys? Interesting questions. Yeah, but Pawan, Hyderabad Metro is built via PPP model. Correct, Gopi. But hey, don't you think any politician would not benefit from approving this entire equation, entire Hyderabad Metro itself? Right. So there are benefits associated with business people. There are benefits associated with banks. There are benefits associated with politicians. Everybody is basically looking for that. Right. Okay. Now, what is happening with the NBFC space? Right. Abhilash, BNPL, RBI, NBFCs. This is another whole tricky matter to start with. Right. If you know, guys, for example, there is a company called as Shriram Finance. How many of you guys know it? Do you know it? Shriram Finance. Shriram, I think it is Shriram Vehicle Finance or something like that. Do you guys know it? Shriram Finance is a pretty big company in the South India, and it also has presence in Rajasthan and a few other eastern states. Sorry, western states. right? Now, the point is, Shriram Finance, I'm sure not many of us know, is the largest non-banking financial corporation of the country, which has 70,000 crores or even more under its management. They're managing roughly 70,000 crores on their assets, on their books. This is huge. Right? It's one of the largest NBFCs in the country. Okay. Now you go think about it. Look at how the entire stock market has performed and how Sriram Finance stock has performed over the last 5 years. If you go into their quarterly calls, I've listened to their quarterly results recently, and it's a great company because it's managed by well experienced, thought out leaders, all that stuff. But end of the day, if you look at their stock performance, it has, I think, it did not even grow in the last 5 years. From 2018 till today, it did not grow at all. Now, the reason is these NBFCs, the non-banking financial corporations, these companies have lost the trust of the government, the RBI, with all the entire scam that has happened or the entire fall that has happened in 2018. Go read about what happened in 2018. That company, which was having IL&FS, I believe the name of the company, it is that company which was giving infrastructure related loans. For example, if you promise that, hey, I will build a road, and if I'm a bank, I'll give you, let's say, 100 crore loan, you'll go ahead, build that loan, or you'll go ahead, build that road. But it is not that you will get immediately that money, right? Building a road will take a long time. Subsequently, you will also get that money after a long time. So this bank was giving out so many loans, and when it was having little stressful situation, it could not go out and ask the people to whom it has given loans to pay back, because these guys were saying it will take years for us to pay back this money. So this company, which was having close to 1 lakh crores as loans, this was under stress, and that's the reason why the 2018 crisis has happened in India specifically. Go read about that, and that was an NBFC. And that is the reason why, if an NBFC, which is not well, if not everything is not controlled by the RBI, and if it does not come under the regulatory constraints, NBFC, that is what happened. And RBI is very skeptical to give more these NBFC licenses to companies. For example, PhonePe has asked for a NBFC license. It did not get it previously in November 2022. Go check out. That was another news. So that's the reason why PhonePe has acquired Just Money, which had an NBFC license, right? So with respect to what RBI is doing with these fintech companies, it is not very clear with respect to the value proposition. These guys are operating outside of the most important financial markets within India. So even if a collapse happens in any of these companies, which have still not are profitable, which have still not proven economic viability, so to say, the impact on the overall financial market is still pretty low. So these guys want to assess them first and then slowly bring them into the market. This is my perspective again, guys. There's a lot of risk associated, and why do you want to take on that risk and build that into the system? Because they had a very, very, very bad experience in 2018 itself, and it's not too long back, right? So what the RBI is playing this wait and watch game with NBFCs is well worth it. And Sriram Finance, as I mentioned, is a well managed company, but its stock did not grow at all because it didn't do anything. But unfortunately, it is currently in a bad industry. It's in an industry which nobody trusts, and that's the problem for that stock. It is doing everything right. It is doing all the things. It is growing revenues, all that stuff. But unfortunately, it is at the wrong place at the wrong time, right? So that is another perspective, guys. I can keep on talking about then I can keep on talking about these topics. I'm very excited about these things, but I hope you are understanding. I just want to give that background information on what and how these things work. Okay, let me go back to the start. There are a lot of questions I did not cover from the start. Let me just go through a few of them and see. Sparsh, how does bank assurance work? Sparsh, it says bank assurance is basically a company like LIC and IDBI coming together, Sparsh, and working together so that in IDBI, LIC can sell its policies. Right? End of the day, it's also a financial instrument. You can change the insurance into a financial product and you can sell it. Right? So it is using the bank's distribution system to get to more customers. That's all. And that is bank assurance. If you are using bank as a distribution system to reach out to more customers, it's a customer acquisition strategy for insurance companies when they tie up with banks. That's all, Sparsh. I hope if you have any more questions, type it down, Sparsh. Okay, so let me go back. How does that work for skin the blending? Getting how does that affect to answer? Who are the customers? Let me just go through a few more questions, guys. As I mentioned, Adani default lead to a 2008 crisis like in India. Pranav, I personally believe now banks have no choice. The government has no choice unless, let's say, Reliance is also coming into the picture, and it is also basically giving that promise of growth. There is no option but to support Adani. How does money creation by banks play a role? I think I explained it a bit. What is your opinion of private equity funds investing in Indian banks? So that's a whole other story. Uh, they own a piece of almost every company. Yes, Gopi, investment management companies. I'll get back to it. Saurabh Menon, no, not our management consultants overrated. No, Saurabh, I don't think so. Probably the work they do is overrated, but they are pretty great individuals with great capabilities. That's the reason why they leave consulting and after 4 or 5 years they move into some fantastic roles around the world. Ashutosh, what licenses are required to be an individual lender? It is not about the licenses that you need, Ashutosh. It is about your background and history as well. Okay, Ashutosh, if you go back, Ashutosh, in time, okay, let's say even 1,000 years back, if you are a wealthy individual, it doesn't mean you can say, I'll take a banking license and I'll start lending money to people who want and I'll charge an interest rate. No, that was not the case even 1,000 years back, Ashutosh. Even now, that's not the case, right? Uh, what was there at that point in time? Just go and read history a bit, little bit, guys. It was very interesting. Christians were not allowed to lend money. They were never allowed to uh, give money and take interest on top of that. It was only allowed in the Jewish community, and that is the reason why. If any of you know, this is very interesting guys. There is Goldman Sachs, Marcus Goldman, and then Sachs, his full name, I'm not able to recall his full name. Both of them are Jews, right? Jews community is the one which basically, not right now, their influence have been going down because all the other communities are also equally participating in the banking world. But Jews community is the one which was given permission to lend money, to give money initially, and Christians were never allowed to do that, even if they were rich individuals. So it started as a system, and they built their entire financial institutions like Goldman Sachs. So please go read about it. It's a very interesting story. Tarun, I do believe so. Uh, all the friends working in banks, what banks have a bad culture? Does that affect in recruiting good talent over the years? Tarun, I believe yes. It will have bad. What about Coal India and aspects of Coal India, guys? Let's stick to bank, and you tell me whatever questions you have regarding the banking industry. But I believe, Tarun, your question is, I agree. Why banks have a bad culture? Pretty obvious. Uh, they are not into a product, right? Tarun, you go check out. This is a very interesting exercise, guys. Again, go check out where do banks hire people from, okay, or what are the roles banks hire for. Okay, you will see 90% of the MBA grads, 90% of the undergrads who get into banks are starting from customer facing roles. They are not in back office roles. First, they will start with the customer front end roles and then move into the back office roles. So this is how it works, and that is the reason there is a lot of, and go look out any of these CEOs in the companies, banking, major banking corporations. All these guys have risen through the ranks, and all of them have first started to get into the banks from their front office roles. Okay, so you need to understand where banks hire from and what are the roles they hire into, and that is the reason why it is frustrating. You need to continue. It doesn't matter even if you have a great MBA degree, you need to go through that training in a bank. Like how in management consulting, doesn't matter you start as an associate. Similarly, in banking, you will, majority of the cases, you will start as that front office, customer facing, that nice smile kind of a guy. You have no other option. And that's frustrating to a lot of people who are analytical, who want to do generate that money, who are sitting in. No, that doesn't happen in the retail banking space. High capital, low interest sectors could. How can we improve the insurance penetration in India? Stuart, I will do probably another session on insurance, and we'll get to that. Stuart, let me just go back and answer a few more questions. uh, My question is, does that work for cyclical sectors? What's why HDFC, what keeping the money flow in ecosystem and making the money earn more? Anjani, does that work for cyclical sectors, something like metals or automobile? Another question is, given the P2P lending bank getting noticed, how does that affect the banks? Anjani, if you ask me, that works in every sector. Every bank has built their niche over the time, right? HDFC has built in a few industries. IDBI Bank has built in niche in its own industry. Typically, even NBFC like Sriram Finance has built its niche in transport. Bajaj Finance has basically built its niche in consumer lending, right? So every bank has built its niche by connecting with the ecosystem, complete ecosystem from end to end. And so it does work in both cyclical and non-cyclical sectors. It's just that, does it work for that bank versus not, is the only question. Okay, showing good profit. No, Pradeep, I don't know if the technology integration will help increase the small finance banks, because Pradeep, almost all the banks right now are integrating themselves with the tech companies, right? No questions about that. If they do not have a good app, if they do not have a good website to start with, like that's the fundamental problem that we are talking about here. They are already going and acquiring these tech companies. On the other hand, if they cannot acquire, if they cannot build that, they're at least going and investing in these tech companies, right? So these traditional finance, the banks that we are talking about, these guys are going and acquiring, investing in these fintech startup space because they don't want to miss out on that opportunity, and subsequently they are looking that as a customer acquisition strategy, as a funnel. I'm not even talking about the Indian banks. I'm also talking about JP Morgans of the world, right? Some of the biggest banks in the industry are also going and acquiring small startups in the fintech space. JP Morgan has acquired a company called VPay, a fintech company, just to give these customers the exactly what you are saying, right? An additional ability to pay, like a payment service window. Now, Pradeep, I believe it is not just probably a now it is not just like it's a nice thing to have, it's a mandatory thing because almost all the banks around the world are doing this. uh, okay guys, I uh, where are working and where are located. Awesome. All right. Share few on how AI will be influencing banking. Okay, guys. I thought I'll schedule it for 30 minutes only, but more questions are coming up. So probably if you are interested, I'll go ahead and continue to do these sessions more often, because there are a lot more questions and I'm sure I'm not going to cover all of them. But my objective was to take up a few questions where I can explain the basics of the industry, uh, all the multiple viewpoints, and I hope I did convey that. Please do let me know if any other questions. Go back, comment on the latest video, and I'll again take it in the next session. Okay, all right, guys. Chandu, I will. Why don't you put it down and I'll try to answer. Okay, if you have any other ideas as well. Okay, awesome, Gopi. Glad to hear that. Any others who want to do more these kind of sessions across different industries? Yes, Harinder, 70 hours. I think it is less. It is even more. It's probably 80, 90 hours because you work on Saturday, Sunday as well. Cool. Thank you, Vishnu. Thanks, Chandu. Awesome. Good to hear that. Please do go ahead, follow the channel, guys. Would very much appreciate your love and support. Will help me do more of these interesting videos and also these sessions. Take care, guys. See you again. Bye bye. Awesome, Stuart. I will do that. Take care. Bye, guys. Bye, Tarun.